it's close to a perfect book. There's almost nothing to change. And if there is change to be made, I'm not going to be able to say it. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like,
Yeah.
it really is one of Terry Pratchett's like best work. Tolkien will be around for ages. I think the same of Discworld, and especially to people in England. Like any of you guys that are watching over from England, I'm sure you guys know the cultural significance that Terry Pratchett
Are
really
we going to
has.
assume we have an international audience right now?
There's one.
We can't get our
Maybe.
neighbors to watch this thing. You expect Jeffrey from London to tune into this?
I can have hope. You know, if Discworld taught me anything, it's to hope.
I forgot the whole message. You're right. Turn me around. Small Gods.
Welcome. I am so excited for this one.
Likewise.
This Small Gods by Terry Pratchett is in my top 5 books ever.
Of all time.
Of
all time.
It's
in your top 5 of these books.
Yes.
And more behind us. And more in your bedroom. And upstairs. You have books everywhere you need to move. Like, you need to move out. It's a problem.
I do kind of just like leave the books around.
But top 5 of all this. Do you understand how huge that is?
Oh no, Small Gods, and it also gets a special rating. You know how like some they get the special medal on their own, like a little award. Small Gods gets the Richard Smile Award.
The Smile Award.
It gets this. I have never smiled so much in a book. Other books have made me cheer. Other books have made me cry. My mouth hurt from smiling so much when reading Small Gods.
It's like you're at a stand-up special, except cuter and better. And
it's close to a perfect book. There's almost nothing to change, and if there is change to be made, I'm not going to be able to say it. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like,
yeah,
it really is one of Terry Pratchett's like best work.
So this book is the 13th book in Discworld.
Discworld
and
series.
Discworld has 41 novels that he wrote over 30-something years in his life, 32, I believe, years of his life. Do you want to talk about Discworld for a second and why, if people haven't... So we're going to do spoiler-free first for the first maybe 10 minutes of this video, then get into spoilers and talk about why we love this book.
Yeah.
But first things first with Discworld, is this a good entry point into the Discworld?
It's a great entry point. It was my personal entry point into the series. So Discworld itself is a long series, but basically is an absurdist fantasy world. And description of the world. The Discworld, where all the story takes place, the world is a flat disc on the backs of four large elephants that are standing on the great turtle that swims through space, where the sun actually has to drag the light behind it, where the sun is actually faster than light because the light is very lazy.
That's great.
And there are recurring characters like Death. The personification of Death himself is one of the most human characters ever written. One of the most endearing. Then you have, oh God, there's so many repeating characters, but
this is the 13th book in Discworld, but you don't have to read them in order.
Exactly.
There are series in there like the witches and so forth, right?
Yeah, so as Terry Pratchett wrote it in chronological order, there are groups of characters that you kind of follow. Or there's the wizards, and they're in the city Ankh-Morpork. So there's about 5 or 6 novels that kind of focus on them specifically. There's the witches, and there's about 5 or 6 that cover them specifically. Same thing with Death himself. And so of those, you definitely need to read in chronological order. But you don't need to read those sets of books in any particular order.
You could start right away with Small Gods.
Exactly. So,
which it's the only Discworld book I've read. You wanted to introduce me to Discworld. You said read Small Gods. I did. Thank you. So
yeah.
It's excellent.
Other entries could possibly be so Small Gods. That was mine, but you could also read Going Postal or Guards. Those are typically the three that are some of the best entry points to the series.
Amazon agrees because I looked it up real quick on Amazon, and the top-selling Discworld book is Small Gods. Other than I think number one is like a map type thing. That's cool, a cool book you can buy. But as far as the actual novels go, Small Gods is constantly on the top of that list. It's a great entry point, and it was written in 1992. Doesn't feel like it. The book is timeless.
Oh yeah,
It's a timeless book, timeless tale, and has a timeless message.
no, it will be one of the books that, like, Discworld and Terry Pratchett's World will be one of the things that survives a long time. It is, I personally put it on the level of Tolkien on survivability and timelessness. Tolkien will be around for ages. I think the same of Discworld, and especially to people in England. Like any of you guys that are watching over from England, I'm sure you guys know the cultural significance that Terry Pratchett really has.
Are we going to assume we have an international audience right now?
There's one.
We can't get our neighbors to watch this thing. You expect Jeffrey from London to tune into this?
I can have hope. You know, if Discworld taught me anything, it's to hope.
I forgot the whole message. You're right. Turn me around.
So, okay, let's go right into our
spoiler-free rating.
Spoiler-free rating.
Yes. So spoiler-free rating overall, out of 10.
A 9.35.
Very strong. It's your fifth of all time.
My fifth favorite book of all time.
Wow. Awesome. So I gave an exact 9 out of 10. Excellent.
It's pretty darn
beautiful book. Anything 9 out of 10 for me is like I'm falling over. I love
Yeah.
I love it. So 9.3. You guys know how we feel about this. Without spoilers, we're going to talk maybe next couple minutes, just a pitch to you guys, and then we're going to dive deep into, if you haven't read the book, we're going to warn you when spoilers are coming. But just a quick overview of why someone should read this book. What would you say to them?
I'd say if you want to smile, if you want to just have a genuinely fun time that makes you think at the end of it, read Small Gods. It's one of for me, the Discworld is one of those breather books when I'm in the middle of like a heavy series and I just want to break it up and get a good palate cleanser. Discworld's always there for me.
Smiles is the right way to put it. Because I'm around you a lot and it's a little depressing. So when I got my Terry Pratchett in my pocket, I'm like, you know what? I don't need Richie. I can just smile reading this book. And the interesting thing I'll say is this is not a book. We talked briefly about this before the pod. I think we agree on this point. That this is not a book that you're going to go, oh, I got to read the next page. I have to read the next page. No, it's one of those books you could set down and go, I can't wait. You know, I'm going to go back to that whenever I want and I'm going to love it. It's not a thriller type of, it's just so fun and enjoyable. It's always there for you. That's how I feel about it.
It is not a like plot page turner of, oh my god, what's going to happen next? It's just not that kind of book. And in many other books, that's a bad thing. Like, oh, it's not a page turner, it's probably boring you. No.
Not at all.
It's just not the book that really demands like, oh, is this person going to die? Oh, what's going to happen? Like, you're having a very fun time while you're reading it. And I can stop at any time I like and still enjoy myself.
Question for you. Is this book has no chapters? Is that all Discworld books? They don't have chapters?
Yep.
Cool.
There are no chapters.
Nice.
It just goes.
It
just goes and then it stops.
It's an absurdist fantasy world and it's just a crazy ride. I'm going to ask you maybe an impossible question before we get into spoilers.
All right.
What similar books are there to Small Gods that if people would like? Seriously, is there a similar book that someone would like and go, oh, you would like Small Gods? You would like Terry Pratchett?
The only thing I can think about is maybe Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay.
It's the only other like really good absurdist fantasy. Or like, and it's absurdist sci-fi. So different, but
yeah.
There's not much like Discworld. There's other things that are maybe similar to Discworld, but there's nothing like Discworld.
Yeah, it's a unique thing of its own. I think people will love it, and I think that's where we're gonna end the spoiler-free version.
Okay, we go right into spoilers.
I'm excited to get into spoilers.
All right, anything past here, at your own risk.
Spoiler time.
Spoiler time.
Here we go. First category.
Emotional impact.
Emotional
What
impact.
did you give emotional impact?
I gave emotional impact and just real brief, by the way, we have 5 categories that we rate. Should mention this in the video.
Yeah. So
we have 5 categories that we rate, and we rate these each out of 10, and the average of those 5 categories is how we get our total score. So to organize the video, the first category is emotional impact, and I gave that an exact 9 out of 10.
Fair enough. I actually gave it a 9.25.
So right around the same ballpark.
Yeah.
We mentioned this in the spoiler-free version, but a lot of that is just a fun, feel-good, smiling the whole time. That's I'm consistently enjoying my time.
Well, it's two factors for me. So it's not only that I'm smiling, but on the emotional side, it gets me to think.
Mm-hmm.
After I put it down, I'm just thinking through it, and it stays in my head rent-free. Yeah. And I'm just constantly thinking of how wise and how philosophically fascinating this very, very funny book is.
That I think when you mix serious messages with a funny, absurd tone, it's the best chemical combination you can make.
Oh yeah.
And with this one, the thought-provokingness and the critique it has on religious fundamentalism and atheism and philosophers. it has a critique / thought-provoking message on all of these facets.
No one is safe. Like, a very shallow look at this book, I can very much see maybe a fundamentalist Christian who maybe read the spark notes of the book but didn't actually read it, could say that it is a critique of Christianity or a critique of religion, and it's a pro-atheist book, which it is very much not. It critiques religion, certainly, but it's also a critique of atheism and complete non-belief, and it's a critique of general philosophy and even science and democracy. Like, no one is safe.
Yeah, and it's very clear in Small Gods that it is a critique on religion and religious fundamentalism, and you see it's very obvious, and the message is there. It very much mimics religion to the extreme in that fundamental nature. However, a lot of people, because I've been reading what people have thought about this, but there's the line by Simony later. Simony's one of the non-believers who likes the book that the Didactylus, is that his name? Did I say that correct? Didactylus liked. So Simony, when he's presented with Om, the god, in front of him, he literally says, "Don't think you could just get around by existing," or don't think you could fool me by actually existing," something like that. Or just shows even if an atheist is confronted by God himself, still. So it's a critique on both sides, and it's just a really thought-provoking book.
It's not just a critique of religious fundamentalism, all these downsides to it, but it also talks about the upsides and the good sides of actual religion and God, and how God does have a place in shepherding a flock. There's some real positive messages. At the end of the day, this story is about Brother and Om, and how Om makes Brother a better person, and Brother makes Om a better God. And you see them both change because of each other, and Om actually becomes a God worth following. And that's really cool to see. And there's some real reason to actually follow God, and how without God entirely, without anything to believe in, what is there? Because just following people is not always a good idea. So, no, it is a very thought-provoking book for me.
Yeah, and the ending, how do you end a book better? Just the feeling you get from that, with Vorbis being in eternal hell for who knows how long he was there, and Brother coming in at the end, leading Vorbis down the desert.
It is such a beautiful ending of how do you give a satisfying conclusion to your villain, who's a true villain, who deserves.
If anyone listens, listen to the audiobook, please, by Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis recently did the audio version of Small Gods. Amazing. That man can do anything, but
anything. He is.
But Vorbis deserves just desserts. He deserves his upcomings. Upcomings?
Don't know what you just said. I don't even have a clue of the word you're trying to say. That is how out of the ballpark I am about No clue. Richie, I am very upset at how little I know what word you're talking about right now.
Okay, I meant to say a word. Someone correct me in the comments because I can't figure out what I was trying to say. He deserves punishment.
No,
he deserves to get what he's
come. Is what he deserves. what are you trying to say? Is that a word?
I think it is.
Probably is.
It's in my brain.
Okay.
It's in my brain. But he deserves that. But brother is, at the end of the day, he's a kind soul that is not. He is forgiving, but he's one of those people that does right. He does right for right's sake. And so Phorbas isn't redeemed. He isn't forgiven by other people. He isn't turned around at the end where, he sees the error of his ways. No. He suffers. He suffers he suffers justly. But when brother comes across him, he leads him through the desert anyway. He takes him on the other side. And just that wonderful where brother leads him through the desert in life, and then in death, leads him through again.
Damn.
And just wonderful.
And just the overall emotion of the book. Think of the topics. You have torture, death, slavery. Yet you're smiling the whole time you're reading this thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's unbelievable. The most serious topics taken in such a lighthearted way. Small Gods is beautiful in that way. You're reading in Small Gods about a scene about slavery and someone's going to get tortured and this endless cycle of pain and suffering. But you've got Om the turtle and you've got Vorbis just over there commanding his people. It's beautiful.
But yeah, emotional impact, it's one of the highest that I can really give. That I actually reread it. So this is the second time reading it. It still hits. It's one of those books that I can read again and I still find great enjoyment out of it.
Terrific.
While reading. I think we should move on to the next category. Characters. What'd you give it?
Characters, I gave an 8.75.
All right. I actually gave it a 9.5.
Fair. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very, almost excellent. Almost perfect characters for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through, because I can't really think of any character that I thought was in any way missing. Even the small characters, like cut me hand off Digby, who's just in there. He's a wonderful character.
Oh, first we have to mention the best character in the book is Faster Bench. Faster Bench, the ship captain who got sucked up in the fleet who was going to invade the Omnia, right? And he was just there and was like, oh, I guess I'm here now. And there are people who don't have a name for war. So when one of their people tries to say war, they say, remember when Passion Moj hit his uncle with Big Rock? That is how they say war, because they don't have a word for war in their small society of maybe 60 people. Just a beautiful, beautiful Faster Bench.
It's such an absurd little thing of just him just trying to sell fish to all these generals.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Excellent.
But, yeah, I mean, I guess you got to start off with Brother. What a character journey. You see him start out of a very, in some ways, dim-witted fundamentalist that is a true believer in his God but doesn't know why, and believes just because his grandmother told him to, and obviously his grandmother's right, or else she wouldn't have told him.
According to Vorbis, if it wasn't for the deficiency of her sex, she would make a great inquisitor. I see lines like that. I just remembered it from the book because it's that power. The lines just work that hard. We'll get to dialogue.
Dialogue.
We'll get to dialogue.
My notes are just quotes. That's it. And I had to cut. I could have had more, but oh, God.
It's beautiful. So, Brother.
And his journey of discovery, it isn't just a 180 turnaround. He goes through a journey in Phoebe where he discovers people that are happy and relish in the untruth and the uncertainty. And brother, who's always been certain of everything in his life, just these people are spouting untruths and uncertainty, and
they seek ignorance.
They tear down these pillars and have nothing to put in its place. It's awful, and in many ways, fair enough. It is. Like, these people don't have anything to put in its place. And
it's the extreme of both philosophies. It's
Yeah.
so beautifully contrasted.
And I just love how his interactions with Ohm.
Yeah,
Of Ohm being one. Ohm is just so funny.
it really is.
This great and powerful god is now in the body of a little tortoise.
Yep.
And
Because he only has one true believer, and that is brother.
out of one true believer in a city that all follows
Follows the God.
follows
Yeah.
God. Oh, and that's honestly what it really, one of the biggest messages and kind of like over the head message is how in a city of followers all following, praying to the God Om, where there's only one true believer, because all the others are just following the institution, because the institution is, they're following out of fear. They're following out of habit. They're following out of jealousy, whatever you name it. But they're following the institution, not the God. What a powerful statement.
Very powerful.
It's on the nose, though.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
man, it works.
And Vorbis.
God, what a villain.
Vorbis. I'm not doing Andy Serkis Andy Serkis sounds much better than this, but he sounds like this, but better in the audiobook. It's great. Vorbis.
Man. So, what are your favorite parts of Vorbis? Like, why do you think he makes such a great villain?
The descriptor I remember of Vorbis is when, and I'm not saying this word for word because I'm not going to do Terry Pratchett justice here by saying this, but the description of Vorbis is just being in his he gave off the aura that he had a 6-foot perimeter around him at all times, something like that, where he gave a stare.
He gave Vorbis gave off the impression that his personal bubble was in 6 feet in a 6 feet direction all around him.
Yeah, it's just great. It's like, oh, I get exactly what you mean. Yeah. And it's the classic Vorbis being the lead Exquisitor, right? Exquisitor?
Yes, Exquisitor.
Him being Exquisitor. It's the classic, you have all of your Inquisitors and those guys in fear of Vorbis. Everyone's fearful of Vorbis, which just makes him so scary and so overpowering, and his dialogue is so crisp and, ooh, I love it.
Well, he's that cold villain, which are always the best. They don't do things out of anger. They don't do things out of joy. They do things because of this cold certainty that they have. And there's nothing to move him. Like, Vorbis feels like an immovable entity.
What do you think about his motive?
I mean, he's the ultimate fundamentalist, where I love Ohm's description of him when he gets to read his mind, that his mind, he's never read another mind, but is such a steel trap where nothing gets in, that the only thing Vorbis hears are his own thoughts echoing inside his own head.
Oh, nice.
And that's such a great description of him.
Yeah.
And how everything he ever does, he's gained zero input from his God, from other people. Everything that he thinks is maybe his, like, thoughts that he's come up with are just echoes of his own. Nothing new.
Yeah. Surprisingly. So, yeah, anything else you want to add of Vorbis?
Oh.
Just a great villain.
He has some of the best dialogue.
Part of the message.
Of just, like, brother faints, and he looks over at brother Nimrod and says, like, no, brother Nimrod's like, oh, he works in the gardens too much. That's just what happens.
Right.
And Vorbis, looking at the unconscious brother, just goes, have you tried beating him?
That was much closer to Andy Serkis' voice, by the way.
And brother Nimrod's like, I don't think that's going to work this time.
That's great. But I mentioned if you want anything to add on Vorbis, because I want to move on to one character who I gushed over, Didactylus. Didactylus is just such a fun character to me. He's a blind person who carries a lantern for philosophical purposes. You know,
Oh, yeah.
He's
Of
makes a
course.
point, of course.
Like, what philosophy, man?
Yeah, man. You gotta philosophize. That's how you do it, man.
But I just love how they're all hippies and also scientists, and like, they're such a weird combination.
Yeah, and one of them had their pants off because they philosophize so much that they forget their pants, you know. It just
Well,
happens.
there's so many references to classic Greek philosophers where it's a common occurrence that philosophers in Ephebi, the city on the Discworld, where they have bathhouses, and it's a frequent occurrence where they jump out of their bath just completely naked, saying "Eureka," and they have to go to the local store to get pen and paper. And then forget, but that's a common occurrence. Or most philosophers live in barrels, but some barrels have a bathhouse in them. So like, and that's references to Greek philosophers and how they treat it almost in a commercialized setting.
Nice.
Like, it's the fashion of it,
Yeah.
which I just find funny.
Yeah. You have him and Ern, great duo. And
Oh yeah.
Over just to say why I didn't give it a 9 because being picky about it. I didn't like. I'm looking at a character like Simony. I didn't fully get Simony. I was like, okay, he's a fine character, fits his place.
I appreciate him more on the second read through.
Oh, okay.
I'm
not enlightened enough. I haven't read it twice yet. Okay, okay.
See, you're just not.
All right.
You're not big-brained enough.
Okay.
You gotta read it.
I saw that dig.
Time.
Oh, on my second read, I understood Simony more. You pretentious. But actually, what did you get more from him on the second read?
Well, he shows more than any of the other characters that being on the right side is not enough. You have to be on the right side for the right reasons.
Okay.
That he is that classic soldier where you have Vorbis on one end, you have Brother on the other, and you have Simony kind of right in between. He can go, like, he very easily influenced, and I think he speaks a lot more to the common people, that kind of the whole populace, that he very easily can be like Vorbis and follow someone like Vorbis, and he can very easily follow someone like Brother. And you show how even when he's leaning toward Brother's side, he's still influenced by Vorbis, and he's like Vorbis in many ways, and still that kind of violence and that brutality and coldness to life that he has. And Brother has to bring him back, like, no. You can't just be on the right side. You have to be on the right side for the right reasons.
I like that. Okay.
And he shows the folly of it, and just throughout all of the instances, he's on the good side, but he goes about it the wrong way.
Got it.
And I think he's very important in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could convince me to up my rating overall of the of certain categories. Like maybe if a week from now it'll be like a 9.2 or 3, closer to your rating. I think mainly why I didn't give a 9 versus 8.75 is just preferences. I don't know, just the way when I feel about it, I'm like, excellent. I'm like, oh, but I prefer that, I love it in so many ways. I'm looking at other books I loved and go, I think I prefer this here. So it's still, there's an argument to be made that it does everything perfectly.
Yeah.
So
I just love the side characters so much. Like, of course, I love the main characters, but all the side characters fill such great personalities, and the populace of the world itself, the characters no character acts like they would on Earth. Like even the local slave in Ephebi acts like a Discworldian. None of them feel like from Earth, and they all feel alien, as they should. And they all have this. Every character has a little sense of madness of living on a disc, riding on the back of a turtle, and all of them have that and that common thread, and I just love it.
You just mentioned very important side characters. The Ephebian slaves who are treated better than Brother, and go ahead.
It's appropriate to bring up the
go ahead
the quote that the Ephebian dictator told Vorbis. Vorbis says, Slave is an amphibian word. In Alm, we have no words for slave, said Vorbis. So I understand, said the tyrant. I imagine that fish have no word for water. What a great line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great line.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like
that's
just
beautiful.
And I think you could probably take that as maybe like a capitalist sense. Like I could very much see a read of how you're a cog in the machine and you're a slave, but just by another name. Like you're all free, but all the system around you, like, are you really free? Where the slave gets time off, gets to eventually gets to own slaves of his own. Like there's a whole system.
Point the slaves don't revolt is like, what's the point of being because I'm going to be freed one day. What's the point of saving up to be freed if I can't own slaves one day?
Yeah.
That's their thought process. It's like, wait. Oh,
yeah, this book makes you laugh at slavery. So
yeah. It's such
two
a
white guys laughing at slavery.
Hey. I don't know how Terry Pratchett pulls it off, but slavery, torture. I don't think he covers genocide, but close enough.
The civilization in the desert that is just wiped out.
Okay, yeah, we don't see it happen, but it does.
Yeah.
But cool. Anything else you want to add on characters?
Well, I think we'll move on. We spent quite a bit there.
All right, fair enough.
Plot will be, I think, a little shorter.
Okay, plot time. What did you give plot out of 10?
9.25.
9.25? Okay, I gave it an 8.5. Very great again. Mm-hmm. Very excellent. So
yeah, I think I gave it higher because of just how many times that it is so satisfying of a conclusion. And all the little things are concluded very well. That I don't really think there's any wasted time in there. There's no part of the book that I don't think you could just take out completely. It all adds value.
I think the best example of that is how it's paced super well is the amphibian battle.
Yeah.
Do you remember that part of the book where the battle in the Phoebe is basically glossed over perfectly?
Yeah.
To where it's not, we don't see what happens. It's Vorbis, they go through the labyrinth, and then one of the next sections, because there's no chapters. One of the next sections is just how it's told in a paragraph or two about the invasion. Because you don't need to focus on the invasion. It's not the purpose.
Who cares?
He focuses on what you need to understand for the message of the story and to relate to these characters.
And here's also another reason why I have to give it higher into the nines is this is absurdist fantasy, and it doesn't feel like Deus Ex Machina. Mm-hmm. I want you to think about that. Not one, it's hard to avoid Deus Ex Machina feeling in just standard fantasy or when there's magic involved at all. Think the Time Turner or Thor: Love and Thunder's Eternity. It's very easy to fall into that trap. Now, have magic and fantasy, and then add on top of that absurdist humor, and somehow make that plot feel earned and not just an ass pull.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Where, Ohm comes, flying out of the air from a turtle and kills Vorbis. Just boom. That's not an ass pull because it came from the very beginning. Yeah. Very beginning of the eagle circling and talked about how they're scared, they pick up tortoises and throw them on the ground. That feels earned. Everything in the book feels earned.
Yep, very much
and that's impressive.
Agreed. I think the ending as well with not just how Vorbis ended, but Brother's end before he dies, and which that's great in the desert, but before he dies, one of the helpers, maybe another, but anyways, if someone comes up to him and is asking him about something, it's like, hey, it's been 100 years, and the last thing Brother says before he dies is, 100 years, I thought it was 50. I forgot. It's like the first time he forgets in the whole story and it's just so peaceful, and it's that letting go. It's great. The way the plot's structured in that sense of the payoff is there. The setup. Ugh, lovely.
Well, I also just like the little ending with the historian, where the historian's telling his boss of, I had to nudge things around a little bit to get things moving. Like, you're going to get in trouble. And the actual written history was that brother dies, and there's 100 years of warring and strife and famine and all these terrible things. Is like everything work out? And the historian's like, yeah, everything worked out in the end. It was good.
It was good.
And I just like just that little bit of how much brother really did influence and help. It's such a satisfying conclusion for the character.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know what? I'm going to challenge you.
All right.
I'm going to challenge you.
Right.
I'm plotting just everything we've talked about so far. Is there anything you could critique here so far? Why not a 10, Richie? Personally, for me, like I said with the last one, there's minor things in my head I'm not even going to vocalize because they're so minor. It's like personal preference. As far as overall, like it's excellent, great, boom, boom, boom. I'm just talking personally, like I'd give it 8.75 instead of 9 or this or that. But for you, is there anything you could say up to this point, like with plot-wise, of, I didn't love this part or didn't like that?
I would say that Didactylos and his nephew, Ern, are not as, like, they take up a good amount of page time, but are not as well executed as the stuff with Brother and Vorbis. Like, that's the real heart of it. And they tackle the kind of religious aspect, and then Didactylos covers the more technological, and basically covers the idea of, nuclear deterrent and war, escalation of arms, basically. And so, good, but they're not as good as when they were in a Phoebe.
Got it.
Still very good. Still very enjoyable. That's why it's still a 9.25. But if I have to critique something, it's not as good as...
Got it. I just wanted to show we're not biased here. We can show both sides. All right, let's go on about loving the book again. But yeah, plot, I think that it's a shorter section because it's just clean plot, great pacing, not much else to say otherwise if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, it's clean. It's a clean plot that everything in there feels earned. It feels a well-woven story. And yeah, and just kind of blown away with it.
Awesome.
Now into, I think we both agree, the best part of Discworld, and this book specifically, of Small Gods, is the dialogue/prose.
Agreed.
It's the best part.
What'd you give it?
9.75.
9.5. Yeah, it's the highest rating category of the book for me.
It's one of the most quotable books I've ever thought of. Like,
finish after me.
Mm-hmm.
Time is a drug.
Too much of it will kill you.
Look at that. Look at that.
What a good line.
Just banger after banger line.
That actually is my first quote here, too.
Oh, is it?
Time is a drug. Too much of it will
That was my first line. Yeah. Guilt was the grease in which the wheels of authority turned. Damn. Okay.
Oh, my God. There's so many good...
Throw another line out there. Go.
Fear is a strange soil. It grows obedience like corn, which grows in straight lines to make weeding easier. But sometimes it grows the potatoes of defiance, which flourish underground.
All right. Guilt jerked Brother upright like a hooked fish. He turned around and sagged with relief. It wasn't Vorbis. It was only God. Just lovely. All right, top that. Go.
Death paused. You have perhaps heard the phrase, he said, that hell is other people? Yes, of course. Death nodded. In time, he said, you will learn that it is wrong.
Damn.
Death is one of the best characters ever written.
That's awesome.
Oh, God. But,
you have to...
okay, yeah.
I just find funny was you had to have a mind like Vorbis to plan your retaliation before your attack. It's great. Oh, God.
Oh, God.
These lines are so killer. Why did I not give this a 10?
I know about sureness, said Didactylus. I remember, before I was blind, I went to Omnia once, and in your citadel I saw a crowd stoning a man to death in a pit. Ever see that? It is done. It has to be done, brother mumbled, so the soul can be shriven and... Don't know about the soul. Never been that kind of philosopher, said Didactylus. All I know is it was a horrible sight. The state of the body is not... Oh, I'm not talking about the poor bugger in the pit, said the philosopher. I'm talking about the people throwing the stones. They were sure all right. They were sure it wasn't them in the pit. You could see it in their faces. So glad it wasn't them in the pit that they were throwing just as hard as they could. Like, oh.
Yeah, Terry Pratchett, you know what you're doing, man.
Oh my
You got
God.
it.
Like, I had to cut, or one of the ending lines, brother talking about the army is closing in and they're outnumbered, outgunned, everything. And brother decides to walk out and meet the opposing armies, and says, I don't even think I wrote this one. I just had to remember it. 10,000 will not be sufficient, but perhaps one will be enough.
Nice.
What a badass line!
Yeah.
What a great line!
Oh.
What are some others that you got on you?
Some of them I don't have exactly the quotes, but
okay.
generally what was said, like, obviously if we're to look historically on Earth, how invasions are brutal, and when you invade another city, there's rape and pillaging and so forth. In Discworld, it's civilized invasions woe the woman with charm and gifts. There's no need for barbaricness. You woe the woman with a nice gift once you invade the land, and they will, if they like the gift, then you shall mate. It's just so, it's like, okay, that's...
Well, just how people interpret... okay, one of the best that if you know about atheism and, like, the existence of God, a classic argument on the existence of God is the watchmaker argument. That if you find a watch on the sand, that it implies that there was a watchmaker. And just like the world, you see the world and all the complexity of it, that it must be a maker of the earth. Discworld, on the other hand, and I quote, or to put it another way, the existence of a badly put together watch proved the existence of a blind watchmaker.
Man. Yeah, I'm slowly being convinced to put this as a 10 dialogue. It's
honestly, I don't know why I gave it
9.75. Yeah. I guess when you're listening to it, I will say this. I will say being the terrible critics we are, the only reason it's not 10 out of 10 is, like, I noticed some lines, like, didn't hit for me. Not every single line hits. There's so many great ones. Yeah. But if it's if we're talking perfect, like perfection itself. Yeah. But still, it's close to perfect. It's nearly perfect. Still love it.
I feel appropriate with it because Lord of the Rings gets 10 out of 10.
Got it. And it's not so much close.
You're right. It isn't perfect because, like, there's plenty of quotable lines, great lines. Mm-hmm. But as a whole, altogether, like, the interconnecting things, there's some stuff that just seems good and normal. Yes. But it's not all poetic like this. Where Lord of the Rings, the entirety of it is poetic and quotable and just altogether encompassing a perfect 10.
Got it.
So yeah, I'm satisfied with giving it just shy of a 10.
Fair. Very fair. And obviously we have to finish this up with Ohm's line. Do unto others before they do unto you. Oh. Come on now.
That's one of the best lines.
Come on. All right, you want to go into world building?
Yeah.
Finish this off with world building.
World building. It's another entry in Discworld that perfectly encapsulates the insanity.
Rating out of 10. What is it?
I give it a 9.
Finally, I give a category higher than you. 9.25.
I only gave it lower than you probably because I love the world.
Yeah.
But one of the best parts of Discworld is Ankh-Morpork. And
Okay.
Ankh-Morpork is not in this book.
Okay.
And so it is very good, but the world gets better. And so that's where I'm like, if the world gets better, I can't give it higher than this.
So the excellence of the world, you have Omnia, of course, a Phoebe, the desert, the descriptions of society, which goes into the world building, the class structure. There's just so much to it that I thought it was, once again, everything in this book is excellent. And specifically a Phoebe, the way it's described, where there's this one description was used. It says, one man's patio was another man's roof. It was a pedestrian place, enough for a person or donkey, but not for a cart. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's...
Puts a picture in your head.
Got it.
Boom.
Okay. And then we see naked, or I don't know if that was right before or after, then we see the naked guy.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this city's crazy.
Well, also, when considering world building, the concept of death is so important. It's one of the key features of Discworld. It is the most... I think it is the best interpretation of death. Discworld would not be what it is without it. Because Discworld itself is very brutal. Like, a lot of people die. There's torture, there's death, there's rape, there's all these terrible, terrible things. It's a cruel world. But at the end of cruelty is death. And how he shepherds people off to the afterlife is such a peaceful way of, like, death is not completely miserable. It's peaceful in the way of, like, the ship captain dies and all his crew. And how when they die, they start the memories are there, but they start losing their earthly attachments of the reasons on why some certain stuff matters. And they go, yeah, hey, who cares about that? Like, I'm already dead. The worst part's over. And if the worst part is over, the only place to go is on. And it only gets better. And how him and his crew are like, let's go discover. Well, let's go find some of those barbarian afterlives. They sound fun. And just on the journey with ghost dolphins flying through the afterlife. And that's such great world building. On death and the afterlife is what you believed. So they're sailors, so they believe in that kind of Davy Jones locker thing. The Omnians get to go to their Omnian afterlife. And so every person has their own afterlife. That's such great world building and makes the world far more pleasant than it really should be.
And how people in Omnia, religion's a huge thing. And then when you go to a Phoebe, the philosophers go, why are gods interesting? They're everywhere. You could see the gods.
Yeah.
We need more metaphysical things that are actually interesting.
Or
when gods are right in front of you, why talk about them?
Or when they talk about, like, oh yeah, no, gods aren't real. And then all of them just, like, scoot away. And they get smited.
Yeah.
And I just love the idea, like, the gods smite them and the body instantly is gone, evaporated. There's just a little pile of ashes. But they always leave the shoes. The shoes never disappear. The smiting has to leave the shoes just to show that they
were there.
Got
it. Oh, great. And then you have, the philosophers are great. The desert's great. Omni is great. Is there the world building aspect that you love the most? Which part of the world was the most interesting to you in Small Gods?
Phoebe. I'm with you. Phoebe was one that just... It's where a lot of the characters really were challenged and where I had some of the best dialogue in a Phoebe. Yeah, I love that part.
Yeah, I love the part of... I should have mentioned this in plot, but where Brother has to memorize the library. Makes so much sense. It's getting burned down. It's like, Brother's got it.
It actually is believable and it's not a Deus Ex Machina. Because it was set up of, like, how absurd his memory is. And also, I know someone watching is not going to get it unless they've read it, but the fun thing with Discworld...
You better have read it if you're this far in the video.
Yeah, I know. But the funny thing with how books work in Discworld, how books in and of itself are magical. And you put too much you put books together, and they start acting in strange ways.
Okay.
And they have their own density, like gravity or space. And so brother doesn't know how to read, but he has all of those books in his head. And books have a mind of their own, of their magic. So they start kind of seeping into his mind. And they know, because the book knows itself, now brother knows. And it makes sense in the magical system. Like, I know it's not set up in this one as well, but in Discworld, it makes perfect sense why the books read themselves to brother in a way.
Okay.
It actually is something similar in the very first Discworld book, where somebody gets a certain page from a book in their head, and it's stuck in their head, and the spell from the book is trying to get out, and he constantly has to like not focus on it and make sure and keep it trapped in his brain, or else it escapes. So it makes perfect sense in Discworld, and a great addition to the world.
Awesome. My intuition's telling me that my rating's a 9, and it can definitely go higher. Once I read it a second time, I can see myself agreeing exactly with you, with the extra bump I should put in my ratings. But
it's
overall,
all the little things.
It is all the little things.
Like, you just love the historian, even the Inquisitor that is a little bit more sadistic on how he's afraid of Vorbis and how he's freaked out by him. Of like, you always understand someone who's, enjoys the thrill of torture. What's terrifying is Vorbis, who does it because he believes it's right and does it because there's not anything else to do, and that terrifies him. Like, I like that aspect of it. It's all those little stuff that makes the book more.
Well, if you're this far in the video, hopefully you've read Small Gods, and tell us what you thought of Small Gods.
No one's gonna watch this video because they haven't read it yet.
Well, they would have clicked off hopefully when we ended the spoiler-free version.
Yeah. But let us know what you think. I will try myself to be more involved in the replying of comments, since I read the book and I'd love to discuss the book with you guys. Let us know what you think about the book, and tell us why you think Small Gods is fantastic.
Small Gods is a big success.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Was that not a good line? Or are you just going to ignore that?
Great success.
Okay.
What? Is that a line from something?
No, I thought like Small Gods was a big success. Like a coin.
Oh, that went right over my head.
Okay. Bye, everyone.